Morning. Recent incidents of kidnappings throw the spotlight on safety and security as the 2019-2020 crime stats showed that Gauteng occupied the top spot with the most numbers reported in Kempton Park. Now, this could be an indicator of grave societal challenges, including greed and criminality. However, kidnappings are one security challenge faced by the South African public in an environment increasingly plagued by violence. Pierre Gildenhuys, he's the head of forensic investigations at Johannesburg-based D&K management consultants, says there is a growing demand for all forms of security in South Africa. These range from security guards at the entrances of residential complexes to personal bodyguards for high-profile individuals and a lot more. Pierre, good to have you. Thanks very much for joining us on the program.
Morning.
So, looking at what's happening with regard to kidnappings, are we noticing an upward trend, or is it just that, obviously, due to a lot more social media and a lot more reporting out there, we're just hearing about them more? Talk to me about these trends.
Well, you know, the trends have sort of loomed in the underworld for quite some time. Not many people knew about these things happening until, you know, in recent events where these cases are high profile, and because they are high profile, they end up on the news. There's a lot of cases that go unnoticed in you know, smaller towns, townships especially, where the cases are not so high profile and the ransom for the children are very less. You know, you wouldn't expect those ransoms to be millions of rands. They can be anywhere from 1,000 rand to 5,000 rand, just purely because of the fact that the syndicates operating in those areas know that the families there aren't as wealthy as the families that the professional syndicates target. So that causes like an upward trend in the recent kidnappings, because people are seeing that, you know, once it's a very successful way of extorting someone for money once you have their loved ones. Yeah. So we're definitely seeing an uptrend in big cases and smaller cases. And what I also believe is we will in recent times also start seeing copycat syndicates. Yes. Because this is getting so much exposure, you know, people will start to see, okay, well, this is working and this is a good way to make money, so let's try it.
Yeah, and this is worrying. And I know that the police do. I remember on one of the recent Sundays, and this was still around about the time where the Motti brothers were still missing. They have been found now. They are back home. But before this, there was an alert coming out from the police to say, please, to the media, let's just stop speculating. Let's just play it very, very safely and quietly at the moment. Because, I mean, I understand what you're saying is that the more prominence this gets, the more people are thinking, gosh, there's an opportunity. Do you find that actually does happen?
Certainly. There's, you know, with every type of crime, there are trends in the industry, in the crime industry. You know, we see it with the advancement of technology when it comes to vehicle hijackings, where they will make use of a certain method, use it for a while, and then something new comes on and they start to notice the patterns. And I think that is very similar to what will happen with the kidnappings. The media gives it exposure, not wrong in doing so. I mean, it surely needs to the message needs to get out there. But, you know, it causes a negative effect on it, if I can call it like that, where now, like I say, you know, people are starting to see that these families, where it's made public in how much they pay to get their loved ones back, you know, people will certainly try and make use of the method, I believe.
Yeah. Speculation is also a very big thing. And I mean, you talk about, you know, hearing the amount of money paid. There was an article that came out yesterday. It was a News 24 article. Now, whether it's true or whether it's not true, I don't know, and I don't expect you to know either. But, you know, they spoke about a lot of the detail that unfolded because people had said to them, and then they put a number to the amount of ransom that was paid, which went into about 50 million rand, and spoke about the drop and go. Is this, in your opinion, a little bit irresponsible? Because I know some people were divided on this and saying, by putting something out there that, we don't know, they say it is true, their sources did tell them, but it's still not confirmed by the family. Is that responsible, in your opinion?
I would almost be reluctant to say that if it was my case, I would make something like that very public. It just lures and attracts a lot of attention to say, wow, like such a big amount has been paid. And now people know that, people are willing to pay a lot of money for getting your loved ones back, rightfully so. It's not a case where you are just going to be asked to pay 1,000 rand or, even 10,000 rand. These are millions and millions of rands. I wouldn't have, if it was my case, I don't think I would have chosen to have that made public.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of the crime stats that come out. And we see that in 2019-2020 year, it showed that there were 930 kidnappings in Gauteng alone. I'm gathering that this number could be even higher if what you're telling us from the very beginning of the interview, where you're saying in areas, some kids are kidnapped and, for 1,000 rand or X amount to be paid for their safe return. I wonder if these are even reported to the police. So does that number, does it sound right to you, or could it possibly be bigger?
I'm absolutely of the opinion that number is way higher than any of us could even fathom. The problem with the crime statistics, even though it gives you a slight indication as to the trends of crime in South Africa, I do not believe, and I'm of not the opinion that those statistics are accurate, purely for the reason that when you do report a crime, or when you experience a crime rather, I think people are reluctant to report it to the police because, number one, in cases where there are kidnappings, I believe they are incredibly scared because of the threats coming from the syndicate to say that if you do go to the police, we will do X, Y, and Z, or you might never see your loved ones ever again. And then secondly, where people do have an opportunity or might see fit to report it to the police, I think there's an absolute mistrust. At that point, when you do report it to the police that anything will happen, we work in investigations and we do a lot of big companies where crime syndicates are involved. Oftentimes, we will firsthand experience the lack of cooperation from investigating officers. It's not all over the board, but we do experience those, and I believe South Africans will agree that when you do report something to the police, it's a big wow moment, if I can put it like that, when the police actually do something where it's not a high-profile case, because if it is a high-profile case, they're obviously forced to jump and give big speeches from big members. But when it comes to small crimes and small kidnappings, if it's not reported, it will stay like that. And if it is reported, I think people have a mistrust in the police for doing anything after that.
Yeah. So when we talk to ransoms being paid, do you find that they do get paid and there is this safe return? What involvement is there from the police side in things like this? Do you find that people want to use the police as assistance, which I mean is obvious, they need to, or is it more private security that they seem to go to try and assist?
Well, I believe that more and more people are starting to realize that having a private company as your security provider is, number one, it is going to cost you money, versus having the police do it as a public service. The benefits of having a private security company for you is, that when you press that button, when you press that panic button, or when you make that phone call, someone is going to respond, and someone is going to respond to the best of their abilities. Now, when it comes to medical services and all of those things, we are definitely seeing an upward trend in security companies adapting the services that should be rendered by the government, purely because of a lack of service from the government. And this is why we are seeing more and more private ambulances on the road. We are seeing more security companies flourish. And also, within the bodyguard industry, we are seeing a very high demand from our profile people to say that, listen, I realize and I've now come to the decision that I would like to make use of a bodyguard or some sort of private security service, and they then go forward with that.
Yeah. Now, I want to talk a little bit about signs to look out for, because what I'm gathering is that these are big syndicates operating. When we talk about the story of, let's just go to the recent kidnapping of a young girl in Mayfair, an 11-year-old girl, and I mean the talk of AK-47s, guys getting out of a car, pouncing on her, pulling her out of a line that she was in at school to get into while she was doing COVID test, well, not testing, but just all the COVID protocols, and being kidnapped. I mean, this doesn't sound like a random act. I mean, these sound like they are very targeted and very syndicate. I mean, is that what you believe? I mean, these things seem to be big business.
Sure. I'm of the opinion that you get two types, put it that way. Number one, you get your opportunistic crime and kidnapping, just how you would get any other crime in South Africa, whether it's a car being stolen or a purse being snatched out of a window. You get the opportunistic types, and then you get obviously the syndicates that operate and target specific individuals for whatever reason they have, whether they know the family has money or whether it might be a personal vendetta against the family or a point that someone wants to prove. You split it up into those two categories. Now, you mentioned, signs to look out for. It's very difficult because it's not like I'm necessarily going to, if I'm the syndicate, send you a message to say, listen, at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning when you drop your kid off at school, someone is going to kidnap them unless you pay me X amount of money or unless you do X, Y, and Z. That's not what they do. It's completely by surprise, and it's completely unexpected to the victim and the victim's family, for that matter. And this is why we highlight the fact that it is important for you to, as much as you can, hire private security. Go do an advanced driving course. If you cannot afford necessarily to have a bodyguard with you, at least do something to better prepare yourself or ask advice from security experts to say that, listen, I have a fear of being kidnapped, or there's a threat that I've received. What can I do to mediate the risk? What can I do to minimize the fact that there's a threat against me? Or what can I do in a situation where I suspect that I might be in a process of a kidnapping? Prepare yourself in those manners and prepare yourself for the worst, because these syndicates are very professional. They've been doing it for a very long time. And I don't believe they're going to stop anytime soon unless there's some drastic action being taken from the SAPS to eradicate these syndicates. They will continue.
Yeah. If we look at the success rate of trying to get a kid or even an adult. I mean, we even saw, the likes of an MEC that was actually kidnapped. I think that was more of a hijacking than anything else. But I mean, it's still a kidnapping. He was taken for hours. There was a big hunt for him. And Mpumalanga's Human Settlements MEC, Speedy Mashilo, he was also hijacked near KwaMhlanga and kidnapped for ransom. I mean, he got out. But I mean, these are common things that we are seeing. But in terms of a success rate from the police in getting, let's focus particularly on children back in these instances, how good is it? How high is the success rate?
I'm not sure exactly when it comes to the SAPS what the success rate is. I think it's very seldom that a kidnapping will take place and the person or the victim ends up dying. I think that is less common than what the outcome would be of letting the person go, or the ransom is paid and then the person is let go. So I'm not exactly too sure what the success rate is, considering the fact that we don't have a level playing field or a level statistic to compare it with, because the statistics on kidnappings is not accurate. So I think even if we do have an estimate success rate from the SAPS, it wouldn't be accurate anyway, because the numbers that are reflected on the crime statistics are so inaccurate that you wouldn't even be able to say that it is guaranteed at least half of the time they will get your loved ones back. I think besides reporting the case to the police, you would have a much better chance of getting your loved ones safely back, whether you pay the ransom or not. It's a matter of safety for the victim and to return them to their loved ones. If you do go with a private company that have capacity and the correct contacts, direct lines within the SAPS to make things happen. And, in those cases, I would certainly trust that process more than I would trust, the police in guaranteeing the safety of my loved one.
And the reality is that we need to try and stop this before it gets out of hand. And the problem is, and I'll just wrap this up very quickly, I mean, we just look at where South Africa has come in terms of criminality, and we always seem to, follow different trends, as we mentioned at the beginning of the interview. But how did we get to this point? Is it that we're noticing that the police are just not on top of issues, and that society just seems to be lawless? And this is, again, another example of there's just not enough visibility.
I think you hit the nail on the head by saying that it is rife with lawlessness, and in my opinion, it is like that because there's no consequences. There's no consequences for small crime, whether it be a purse being stolen or a window being smashed or any sort of small crime considerably that it is still a crime. You often hear the stories that, he will just spend the weekend in jail and he'll be out on bail. Or if it's a murder, the person will get 20 years sentence and he'll be out in 5. People realize that the justice system is failing South Africa because there's no harsh consequences. And I think this is the reason why crime is skyrocketing, because people know that they're just going to get away with it. They're going to bribe an official to look the other way. And we saw it recently in Carte Blanche with the cover that they did on the SANDF at the Zimbabwean border post. Yeah. So I think, that is the reason. It's just lawlessness and a lack of control from governing bodies.
All right, Pierre, we've got to leave it there. Thanks so much for talking to us this morning. That was Pierre Gildenhuys. He's the head of forensic investigation at D&K Investigations at D&K Management Consultants, talking about kidnappings and being vigilant in terms of trying to mitigate this. All right, we've got to go. Have a wonderful weekend. See you again on Monday. Take care.